The team was falling apart, egos were clashing, and yet somehow, under his watch, chaos turned into history. Phil Jackson, the Zen Master, a coach unlike any other in NBA history. Not because he won, but because of how he won. With 11 championships as a head coach, Jackson mastered the art of balancing unstoppable talent with impossible personalities. He led the Chicago Bulls dynasty of the 1990s, then built the Lakers empire of the 2000s. But here's the real question. Who were the players that truly defined his journey? Because if you ask Phil, not every superstar makes the cut. Some burned with relentless fire, others sacrificed for the team, while a few brought pure, uncontainable chaos. And together, they pushed Phil Jackson to test the limits of his philosophy, his patience, and ultimately, his legacy. Phil always said that basketball was more than just a game. It was about energy, trust, and balance. He studied Native American teachings, Buddhist philosophy, and wove them into the hardwood of the NBA. But none of it would have mattered without the players willing to embrace his vision. These 6 names weren't just athletes, they were extensions of his system, each unlocking a different piece of his championship puzzle. From the player who redefined greatness, to the one who symbolized discipline, to the giant who embodied dominance, Phil's 6 chosen warriors tell a story far deeper than basketball. So, which legends did the Zen Master call his favorites? And why? Stay tuned, because once you understand the 6, you'll understand how Phil Jackson built not just teams, but dynasties. Michael Jordan. When Phil Jackson took over the Chicago Bulls in 1989, he inherited one of the most talented players the game had ever seen, Michael Jordan. But Jordan wasn't yet a champion. He was already the league's most explosive scorer, the most marketable star, and the fiercest competitor on the planet. But the Bulls had always fallen short. Critics said Jordan couldn't win the big one, that he was too selfish, too obsessed with scoring, too much of a lone wolf. Phil Jackson changed that. By introducing the triangle offense, Phil forced Jordan to trust his teammates. He challenged him to transform from just a scoring machine into the leader of a dynasty. And once Jordan bought in, the league never recovered. Jordan became the ultimate weapon in Phil's system, ruthless on offense, relentless on defense, and a master of the moment. 6 NBA championships, 6 finals MVPs, countless unforgettable performances. Phil later said Jordan wasn't just the greatest player he ever coached. He was the fiercest competitor he ever saw. Every practice was a war. Every game was a chance to dominate. Jordan demanded excellence from everyone, himself most of all. What made their relationship legendary was not just the wins, but the way they challenged each other. Phil knew how to push Jordan without breaking him, how to let his fire burn while keeping the team intact. Together they built the foundation of a dynasty that defined the 1990s. For Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan wasn't just a player, he was the standard, the ultimate test of a coach's ability to harness greatness, and the first piece in the puzzle that would make the Zen Master immortal. Scottie Pippen. If Michael Jordan was the fire, then Scottie Pippen was the foundation that kept it all from burning down. Phil Jackson has always said that championships aren't won by one player alone. And for the Bulls, Pippen was the ultimate example. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't chasing headlines, but he was the one who made everything work. Pippen's defense was otherworldly. At 6 feet 8 inches with long arms, quick feet, and endless stamina, he could guard all 5 positions. One night, he'd lock down point guards. The next, he'd smother centers. For Phil Jackson, that versatility was priceless. But defense was only half the story. In the triangle offense, Pippen became the true connector. He was a ball handler, a playmaker, a scorer when needed, and always willing to sacrifice his own numbers for the team. While Jordan drew the spotlight, Pippen did the dirty work that turned talent into championships. Phil often said Pippen was the most underrated star he ever coached. Without him, the Bulls never would have won 6 rings. He was the steady hand when Jordan retired the first time. He was the calming voice in the huddle when tension ran high. And he was the player who trusted Phil's system the most, committing to team basketball above personal glory. Scottie was our stabilizer, Jackson once explained. He was the guy who sacrificed who set the tone for unselfishness. He allowed Michael to be Michael. Their partnership embodied the very heart of Phil's philosophy: trust, balance, and the power of the collective over the individual. For all of Jordan's brilliance, it was Pippen's presence that completed the dynasty. And for Phil Jackson, Scottie Pippen wasn't just a favorite player, he was the proof that greatness is never achieved alone. Kobe Bryant. When Phil Jackson arrived in Los Angeles in 1999, he found a young guard who reminded him of someone he had already coached into legend. That player was Kobe Bryant. Kobe was only in his early 20s, but his obsession with greatness was already obvious. He was relentless in practice, relentless in preparation, relentless in his demand for perfection. To Phil, it felt like déjà vu, the same hunger, the same drive, the same intensity he once saw in Michael Jordan. But Kobe was different. His fire wasn't just competitive, it was personal. He wanted to carve his own path, prove his own legacy, and in the process, he often clashed with teammates, coaches, and especially with Shaquille O'Neal. Phil Jackson called Kobe both the most gifted and the most complex player he ever coached. Their relationship was a roller coaster. At times, they were in perfect sync, guiding the Lakers to 3 straight championships in the early 2000s. At other times, their battles spilled into the media, testing both of their patience. And yet, through it all, Phil recognized something extraordinary. Kobe had an unstoppable will. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to dominate, to master every move, every detail, every moment of the game. When Shaq left the Lakers and critics said Kobe could never win without him, Phil returned to guide his former star once again. Together, they climbed back to the top, winning back-to-back titles in 2009 and 2010. Phil later said coaching Kobe was like coaching Jordan all over again, only with even higher stakes. Because Kobe wasn't chasing someone else's greatness, he was determined to create his own. For Phil Jackson, Kobe Bryant wasn't just a player. He was an echo of the past, and a force that carried basketball into a new era. Shaquille O'Neal. If Kobe Bryant was the blade, then Shaquille O'Neal was the hammer. When Phil Jackson took over the Lakers, he quickly realized that no single player in the NBA could physically dominate the game like Shaq. At over 7 feet tall and more than 300 pounds, O'Neal wasn't just big, he was unstoppable. A force of nature unlike anything the league had ever seen. Phil built the triangle offense around Shaq's presence in the paint. Every possession seemed to begin and end with him. If you tried to guard him one-on-one, he would dunk on you. If you sent double teams, he'd kick it out to shooters. Opponents had no answers. Shaq's peak under Phil Jackson produced one of the most dominant runs in NBA history. 3 straight championships from 2000 to 2002. Finals MVP in all 3. A stretch where he was, without question, the most dominant player in the world. But coaching Shaq wasn't just about harnessing his size and power. It was about managing his personality. He was larger than life, playful, charismatic, and sometimes difficult to keep focused. Phil embraced it. He didn't try to change Shaq. He let him be himself, while guiding him toward discipline when it mattered most. Phil later described Shaq as the most commanding presence he ever coached. You couldn't move him. You couldn't outmuscle him. All you could do was watch as he bent the game to his will. The dynamic between Shaq and Kobe was volatile, and Phil often played the role of mediator. But together, they created one of the greatest dynasties the league has ever seen. For Phil Jackson, Shaquille O'Neal was more than just a dominant center. He was the immovable foundation that made everything else possible. Dennis Rodman. No player tested Phil Jackson's philosophy more than Dennis Rodman. When the Bulls brought Rodman in for the second three-peat, it felt like a gamble. He was unpredictable, controversial, and constantly surrounded by chaos off the court. But on the court, he was a genius. Phil Jackson understood what few others could, that beneath the wild hair, the tattoos, and the headlines, Rodman cared deeply about the game. He just expressed it differently. And Phil gave him the freedom to be himself while still holding him accountable when it mattered most. Rodman was the ultimate rebounder, one of the greatest defenders the league had ever seen. He didn't care about scoring. He didn't care about stats. He cared about doing the dirty work, the kind of things that win championships but rarely make highlight reels. Diving for loose balls, battling giants under the rim, shutting down the opposing team's best scorer. This was Rodman's domain. Phil admired how Rodman could flip a switch the moment he stepped onto the hardwood. Whatever distractions existed outside the arena disappeared. Between the lines, he was all business. His defensive energy and rebounding dominance were critical in the Bulls winning 3 more titles, from 1996 to 1998. But Phil's brilliance was in balancing Rodman's eccentric lifestyle with the team's needs. He gave him space when he needed it, even allowing mid-season breaks that baffled the media because he knew Rodman would deliver when it counted. And he always did. For Phil Jackson, Dennis Rodman represented the power of trust, trusting a player enough to embrace who they are while still channeling their gifts into winning. And in the end, Rodman proved that sometimes the wildest spirit can be the perfect piece of a dynasty. Pau Gasol. When Phil Jackson returned to the Lakers in the mid-2000s, he faced a challenge. Kobe Bryant was at his peak, but the roster around him wasn't enough to contend for a championship. What the team needed was balance, and that balance arrived in the form of Pau Gasol. Gasol wasn't loud, he wasn't dramatic, he wasn't chasing headlines. What he brought was intelligence, skill, and humility. The perfect complement to Kobe's relentless fire. At 7 feet tall, Pau was a versatile big man who could score inside, knock down mid-range shots, and most importantly, pass with precision. In the triangle offense, that passing ability became invaluable. He could read defenses, make the extra play, and keep the system flowing. But what truly impressed Phil was Pau's unselfishness. He never demanded the spotlight. He never complained about touches. Instead, he focused on doing whatever the team needed, whether that was scoring 20 points, grabbing 15 rebounds, or setting up his teammates. Gasol's arrival in 2008 transformed the Lakers overnight. Suddenly, Kobe had the partner he needed. Together, under Phil's guidance, they went to 3 straight NBA Finals and won back-to-back championships in 2009 and 2010. Phil later said that Pau was one of the most selfless stars he ever coached. He called him a gentle giant, a player who combined grace and toughness, intelligence and heart. For Phil Jackson, Pau Gasol represented the essence of the team concept. Proof that greatness doesn't always shout, sometimes it's quiet, steady, and dependable. In a career filled with larger-than-life personalities, Pau stood out precisely because of his humility, and that humility made him one of Phil's 6 favorite players of all time. 6 players, 6 different stories, yet all of them connected by one man. Phil Jackson, the Zen Master. Michael Jordan, the relentless competitor. Scottie Pippen, the ultimate team player. Kobe Bryant, the disciple of greatness. Shaquille O'Neal, the force of nature. Dennis Rodman, the wild card. And Pau Gasol, the gentle giant. Each of them challenged Phil in unique ways. Each of them pushed his philosophy to its limits, and together they created dynasties that will never be forgotten. But the lesson is bigger than just basketball. Phil Jackson showed that greatness isn't only about talent, it's about balance, about knowing when to lead and when to let go, about building trust, managing egos, and uniting very different personalities toward one goal. That's why his legacy isn't just the 11 championships or the records that may never be broken. His legacy is the players who became legends under his guidance, and the stories they wrote together. So now, the question is yours. Which of Phil Jackson's favorites had the biggest impact on his legacy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just change how you see the game.